Welcome back to Questing Beast, I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at Shipwrecked in the Swordfish Islands. This is the long-awaited sequel to the books The Dark of Hot Springs Island and A Field Guide to Hot Springs Island, which are two of my favorite books ever created for the OSR or just role-playing games in general. I did a review of them many years ago, and I absolutely love them, and they've become classics in the years since. This book continues to expand upon that world. The first book is set on Hot Springs Island, which is part of the Swordfish Islands archipelago, and this is on a smaller island called Marlowe's Mire, although there is a lot of content in this book that covers all sorts of things throughout the entire archipelago, and lots of great generators that you could use in really any seafaring RPG game. Let's take a look at the physical construction here. This book looks absolutely gorgeous. It's got this gold foiling on the front. It has this white crocodile skin because there's a huge white crocodile that you can encounter. It's about the same size as the Dark of Hot Springs Island, I would say, and it feels absolutely great in your hand. It's got stitched binding. It's got the little bookmark down here. All of the end pages are used for maps. It's really fantastic. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I should point out that the creator of this book, Jacob Hurst, is the publisher of my books, Maze Rats, Knave, and all of my adventures as well. However, I've been a huge fan of his books for a very long time. There's been no secret about that, so it shouldn't be too surprising that I really like this book as well. I should also point out that we're actually doing a bundle deal right now, where if you get a Swordfish Islands book and a Questing Beast book together, you will get a discount on both of them at the Swordfish Islands web store, and we'll even throw in a free Knave patch. Now, why did these books go so well together? It's because all of these Swordfish Islands books, the adventures, are actually system neutral, which means that there's lots of information about the world and the setting and the characters and monsters and so forth, but there isn't any stats. You have to bring your own system to the setting. So a light system like Maze Rats or Knave would work really well with that. In fact, I've heard from a lot of people that they use those systems with this world pretty frequently. So we can see right here the map of Marlowe's Mire, which is the main island that this book focuses on. There are 4 hexes, which is a lot smaller than Hot Springs Island, but it's very densely packed. There's a lot of characters, a lot of factions, a lot of machinations happening behind the scenes that both connect with things in Marlowe's Mire and that connect back to Hot Springs Island and to all sorts of different locations in the Swordfish Islands and across even the multiverse. There's a big island NPC chart. Most of these people are on Marlowe's Mire, but some of them are far away and are influencing things from a distance. So what are the creative assumptions behind all of the Swordfish Islands books? This is a really great introduction, not only to this setting, but to the OSR style of play generally. There's lots of examples of play where you can see how a session would play out. Advice like start playing immediately, share lots of information with your players. This is very much a sandbox hex crawl. There is not a pre-planned story. Things are not supposed to happen one particular way. It's really up to your players to decide where they're going to go and how they're going to act. A big part of this game is the NPCs and the factions. There are a lot of them. They are very fleshed out and very interconnected. So interacting with them and figuring out what they know and who they can lead you to next is a big part of it. A lot of the adventure comes from extrapolating on what the players decide to do, and there's a lot of examples of how you might do that in practice. There's a setting guide for the Swordfish Islands taken as a whole. Here's Hot Springs Island, which is the first books in the series, and here's Marlowe's Mire. Hopefully, we will get books in the future for the rest of it, connecting all of it together. But there is a lot of information here on what's going on across the archipelago as a whole, something that I don't remember seeing as much in the Hot Springs Island book, although it's been a long time since I've read that. Some of these characters and factions aren't going to be super relevant to the islands we've seen so far, but some of them do show up there, and having good background knowledge is going to help tie things together, and you can give clues as to what's going on elsewhere, which can make the world seem a lot bigger. The main way that Marlowe's Mire is probably going to be used is as a base of operations for the PCs. It's pretty small, it's near the center of the archipelago, and it's relatively safe, although there's a lot of ways that things can go very much off the rails. There was a big salvage operation going on there being run by the Martel Corporation, which is kind of like the East India Company. People who are indebted to them get branded with this magical brand and sent to the island to work to salvage all of the shipwrecks that are all over the place. So as you're exploring, you're kind of inside this gigantic open air labor camp, and there's lots of political shenanigans within the company. Here's our basic travel and exploration procedures, same as in Hot Springs Island, and just information about what's the main things to learn about when you're here. One of the weirdest features is the Bone Mire, which is this big swamp with this solid, like Vanta black colored mud at the bottom, and these bone white grass that's growing everywhere, which is super sharp and can slice you up. There's also Marlowe himself, who the island is named after. This guy is just a laid-back, lazy wizard. He's just this old dude at this shack who just wants to be left alone and do his fishing and, just mess with people a little bit sometimes. In fact, he is so tied to the island that his current mood determines the weather on the island. So that's another little thing that the players could grab onto to control things. If you make him mad, you can make the island's weather much worse, which maybe you want to do. There's also an enormous 60-foot long albino crocodile that is a friend of Marlowe, but just patrols around the island. It's, not super hostile. It's a crocodile. It acts like a crocodile. If you get in its way, it could eat you. It can also just eat entire ships when they get in its way. But that crocodile is here because it is actually a visitor from the plane of water. Marlowe has opened a portal to this other plane, and things are coming through. This can be a big opportunity for the PCs because if they actually travel to the plane of water and find a way to survive there, they can use that as an opening into the multiverse where they can get to other places in the Swordfish Islands or, of course, other settings entirely. The other big thing to know about is the world's first airship, the Juggernaut, which has been sent by the Martel Corporation and is kind of just patrolling around the island, observing the salvage operation from the sky. There's a lot of held kinetic energy on this airship. If that ship goes down, or if they decide that they don't like the island, things can go very sideways very quickly. We'll look at more details on that once we find the maps on it. As an open hex crawl, everything is very much randomly generated. There's random tables for all of the different main regions. There's tons of encounters that you might have while traveling around the main path that loops around the island. This is an island that's supposed to feel alive. So alive that it's really outside of the game master's control. You just roll for the encounters and you see what is happening there. All right, next let's get into the actual meat of this island. What are these locations that you're going to be exploring? But first, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Deathbringer, the new high-speed grimdark RPG from my friend, Professor Dungeon Master, along with Brandish Gilhelm, Mark Seifter, and James M. Spahn. Fully compatible with Shadowdark or any OSR system, Deathbringer lets you play classes like the Doomscribe, the Plague Doctor, or the Witch Hunter. The first 2 times you fall to 0 HP, you rise again, scarred, mangled, but with more talents to let you push yourself even further. Throw yourself into the fray rather than playing it safe. The book will also include new adventures by Kelsey Dion, Bob Worldbuilder, Luke Stratton, and me. Show some love for Professor DM by checking it out at the link in the description right now. All right, let's dig into the different locations that you can explore here. Every one of these hexes has its own table with a list of possible encounters and motivations. You can combine those randomly and the number of creatures there that show up. So you might find some zip birds that are in combat, or maybe they're patrolling, or maybe they are just spectating. At hex number 1, we got a fishing hole, Marlowe's moving still, and the sunken gardens. This one is especially fun. It's a still for brewing alcohol because one of the effects that this wizard has on him is that he cannot really get drunk, which is very frustrating for him. So he's created this still to try and create the most insane possible alcoholic beverages to break that curse. Fortunately for everyone else, the way that the magic works is that if you try and get alcohol out of it, it automatically gives you your favorite type of alcohol. It's also constantly in a state of disassembling and reassembling itself, which is kind of fun. In the second hex, there's the Valley of Thin Trees, Marlowe's villa, if you want to actually hang out with him and maybe get to know him a little bit. It's a little bit dicey though. If you annoy him too much, he might just turn you into a bird. That's the thing he tends to do. And there's Stillwater Cove, a suspiciously still and silent little lake, which is actually a portal to the plane of water. And this is where the giant crocodile, Walter, is reborn every time that he is killed. Hex 3 is the Bone Mire, which is the creepy kind of black and white landscape. It includes mint fields, which are razor sharp and will slice anyone to pieces who goes through them. There's the Whispering Rock, which used to be a earth imp that Marlowe enchanted into a giant spire of rock to try and get it to shut up, but even that did not work. The main NPC base of operations, where the Martel Corporation is headquartered, is in hex number 4, where we find things like the ship graveyard, where the groups of humans called the Wreckers, these are the indentured servants, I guess you could say, are disassembling all of these ships, trying to look for valuable treasure. There's Ivy's Cantina, which is the main place where everyone hangs out and plays games. There's also the Door, which is a creepy floating stone door that ties back to the ancient elvish civilization that used to rule these islands, but which succumbed to decadence and fell apart. This door actually leads to a small pocket dimension that's fairly horrifying, and the elves have discovered that the humans have discovered it and sent one of their own to oversee the operation of checking this place out. But elves being horrible as usual, she has her own plans in mind. I love these huge splash pages. Here we got Marlowe the Wizard with his gigantic crocodile, Walter. Whenever a location has more that you can see, we zoom in to these big 2-page spreads like here's Marlowe's Villa. We got a map over here. All of the main locations are numbered on the side here, and they're all done in this format where all of the things that you can find there are in a paragraph with the main things in bold, and then in parentheses or in brackets, details that you can uncover if you pry further, followed by some longer, more narrative paragraphs describing what's going on with that place. I think it's a really great balancing act where if you want to very quickly just tell people what's going on there, you just look at all the bolded words. But if you want to go into more detail, it's easy to do that. This book absolutely loves the characters. They're a huge part of the book. So there's a big 2-page spread just for Marlowe. Who is this guy? What's his backstory? What does he want? What does he not want? Who are his friends? Who are his enemies? What's he currently doing right now? Like maybe he's tiptoeing around in a ridiculously large floppy straw hat, using a red gem to suck souls out of the ether. He hastily shushes any noise and may share, "You find the best souls at dawn, but here I am anyway." Like Hot Springs Island, the locations are often very dense with things going on. So in Stillwater Cove, all of these different locations, you can roll on what's happening for the place as a whole, and then encounters and motivations for every individual location. So there are animals just all over the place and creatures doing stuff. These islands are absolutely bursting with life. And everything is tied into everything else. So you have this giant crocodile, but he's not just a giant crocodile. He has his own personality, his own weird way of coming back to life when you think that you've killed him. And he's very much connected to the Goa, which is one of 2 different lizard man species in the Swordfish Islands. The Goa are always trying to ritualistically hunt him, and they have to get his permission in order to hunt him. So the Goa have all these rituals and practices surrounding this guy, and it just ties him further into the lore of the whole setting. Everywhere you go, the detail just accumulates deeper and deeper. Here's the ship graveyard. Here's all the rules that all of the wreckers here are going to be using. You can get into their culture, the strange society that they have built up, all trapped on this island together. You can head on over to the cantina and meet Ivy, who's really kind of in charge of the Martel organization and their operations on this island. It's a multi-level building. Really, it's 2 different ships that have been stuck nose down into a huge sinkhole, which is great because it adds a lot of verticality to the setting. And as we'll see further on, there's even lots of games at the back that teach you how to do dice games and card games by which you can win and lose money. And then high above the island, we have the Juggernaut, the giant airship with its own series of maps. It has all these different layers here. There's a whole map of all the different NPCs just on the Juggernaut and what they want and what they don't want and how they are connected back to the Martel organization back on the mainland and all of the factions within that organization that are vying with each other through these NPCs. There are 2 huge Vitarak matrons, which are these giant hive mothers of this weird insect species inside the ballast hold of the ship. So if the ship ever went down in a crash, or if they ever dropped these onto this island, it would create this enormous outbreak of these horrifying giant insects that would wipe out a lot of life on the island. The ship also has a black rose, which is this evil magical artifact that is in fact controlling all of the magical brands on all of the prisoners on the island. If you managed to get on board the ship and destroyed that rose, you would free them all. Remember that weird floating elven door that was uncovered? If you head through it, you end up in this prison, I suppose, floating within the astral plane. Who is imprisoned here? Why are they imprisoned here? And will this give you leverage over the elven factions on other dimensions? And what is it that's gnawing on the prison from the outside? Oh, it's just a gigantic ocean-sized evil entity called They Who Consumes. If you head into the plane of water, you can find a link to the Palace of 1,000 Stone Faces, which is a whole separate little mini setting created by Dirk Lechty. This acts as a kind of hub location with links to lots of different planes. And it's full of all sorts of weird characters with their own motivations. But it seems like the kind of location you would only need if you were really wanted to expand the setting and create connections to all sorts of other places. The next section is all about the different factions, and it goes into almost too much detail. If you really like learning about backstory and you want to know how this world is envisioned to work behind the scenes, this sort of thing is a goldmine. But it's not the kind of thing that I think that every group is going to really get into. For example, it has a list of all of the internal warring factions within the Martel Company. Is that something that most players are really going to bother with? Maybe, maybe not. But if you're running a very long campaign and you're traveling throughout all of the Swordfish Islands and you're meeting the Martel Corporation over and over again, that sort of thing could become much more relevant. There's Ivy, who's in charge of all the operations on Marlowe's Mire. I really like the way that the characters are portrayed throughout the book because they're very rarely black and white. Yes, she's kind of a ruthless operator. Yes, she will kill people if she has to. Yes, she's trying to work her way up the organization of the Martel Corporation, which is really not a great place to be. But at the same time, she seems to genuinely care about all of the people on the island and protects them. And since she was installed, she has enormously improved their working conditions, and everyone actually loves her. I love how Jacob is anticipating the different things that players might do, rebellion and its consequences. So if players find out that all these people are indentured servants on this island, they're probably going to try and free them, maybe, or create a rebellion. But what is the consequences of that? Some of the things that players might try and do will actually make their lives much worse. And actually freeing them all is a lot more difficult than you would expect. There's also large-scale ramifications that can happen over the months and years following a rebellion that will ripple across all of the Swordfish Islands. I love this point here that people are a point crawl. So by using the NPC connection chart, you can kind of work your way around it to find someone who has the information you need or has the stuff that you need. All of the different NPCs get a write-up. They all get a portrait, they all have what they want and what they don't want, and any other details that connect them to the rest of the setting. I'd probably want to photocopy these pages and create little cards, little handouts of all of the major NPCs. You can give them to the players whenever they meet them. It really just makes the whole island feel alive, which is something you don't see even in a lot of hex crawls. Everything is built out for you. Tons of legwork has been done for you so that you don't have to do it yourself. There's a huge NPC generator right here, so you can make hundreds of other NPCs if that's what you want. There's lots of tables of rumors, each of which is tied to one of the different locations. So if you ask about any of the hexes, you're going to have anywhere from like 8 to 12, I don't know, different rumors about that place. You're giving your players information, so you're giving them reasons to go there and mess with stuff. To make things even easier for players to jump into, there is a very short starter adventure built into this, explaining how you got onto the island and how you meet all of these people and kind of start figuring out the situation. And it recommends you use a meat grinder, which is a modification of Mike Evans' rules. This is basically a funnel adventure like in Dungeon Crawl Classics, where you create 4 very weak characters. You get sent through a dangerous situation, a lot of them die probably, and then anyone who survives on the other end can be upgraded to being a PC. However, if you want to actually run a longer campaign, these rules are probably not going to cut it. You're going to need a more fleshed out system. The adventure is very straightforward and very short. It's really just about being washed up on the shore of the island after a shipwreck. You were headed to the island to deliver some goods, and then Walter, the gigantic crocodile, bit your ship in half. As you push inland from the beach, you just start meeting a lot of the main characters and locations before finally reaching the main settlement and figuring out the basics of what's going on there. The bestiary at the back has illustrations for all the different kinds of monsters. Again, no stats because this is a system neutral adventure, but there's plenty of weird things to run into. Some stuff I think is new. Some is also found in a field guide to Hot Springs Island, which is one of the best in-world artifacts ever for a game. This one focuses on creatures and stuff that are on Hot Springs Island, but it's all part of the same archipelago. So I would still recommend checking it out probably. An unusual thing about the whole Swordfish Islands setting is that plants are a really big deal. Some of them can be harvested for magical effects. A lot of them are just straight up dangerous, but it makes you focus on what's happening in the environment around you, not just on any monsters that are trying to kill you. And look at some of this bonus material in the appendix. We have tavern games, 3 different dice games, and 3 different card games, all of which are based off of real historical games. Lots of new magical treasure. I love these pieces of treasure because they are not mechanical. They don't increase your stats. Instead, they just do a weird thing, and that allows for a lot more player creativity. Like maybe there's a bag of powder that erases all scents, but it also creates a kind of an orange powder around yourself that makes you very detectable in sunlight. Or maybe Captain Lomax's spare boot. You put this on a dead or sleeping body, and the body will stand up and shamble 6 to 10 feet behind the person who put the boot on it. You can't give commands to it, but they will just follow you around. It's up to you to figure out how that's going to be useful. And look, there's just page after page after page of these, all tied to a particular character or culture. Shipwrecks are pretty common. You might find a shipwreck and want to go investigate it. So here is a whole section on just the different parts of a ship. I love stuff like this. Reminds me of those old cutaway books I used to read as a kid. And there's even 10 wrecks that are near Marlowe's that you could go out and investigate right now. There's even a generator for making your own shipwrecks, including lots of awesome ship names, whether they're military, merchant, or pirate. Like maybe it's the Sweetened Goose or the Bawdy Harpy. Generating names is always really fun. Although I've discovered, actually a friend of mine discovered this, that if you have a generator for tavern names, like the one in Knave 2e, it actually works pretty well for ship names too. And if you decide to loot a shipwreck, you need to know what was in its cargo, from livestock to feed and fiber to different kinds of timber, tools and goods, raw materials, and of course, treasures. Like maybe there's this wooden nest where if you put an egg in it and then heat it up and sprinkle some blood on it, then it will very quickly hatch, mature to full size, and follow you around as your servant, although it will also age very quickly and die soon after that. There's also books and scrolls, weird woods, gems, even furniture, foods, cursed stuff, and even just weird stuff like impossibly the skeleton of a squid. I know that originally when this book was in development, it was just supposed to be just a short little book about the island of Marlowe's Mire, but then over time, it dramatically expanded to have all this extra information for running stuff anywhere in the Swordfish Islands or really in any kind of nautical campaign. And that just makes it way more useful. I really like the fact that the island is so small and contained and acts as a base of operations. Just like Hot Springs Island before it, this gives you a hex crawl, a small location, that is absolutely packed with things to do and interconnected factions and people. It's a world that feels alive and which will spontaneously generate adventure as players interact with it. This book is just a perfect example of the sort of thing that got me interested in the OSR in the first place. It's not system first, it's world first, and it gives you the kind of world that you want to play in. As usual, I will put a link in the description below for where you can pick up a copy of this, as well as where you can pick up my books like Knave if you want a system to run with this and get a discount on both. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.